All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakah Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today wanted to go into Second Esdras, the 11th chapter. I went through the 10th chapter, I believe, yesterday, and so Lord willing, this video will be edifying to the elect, and as the spirit permits, be able to go into more different chapters. But basically Second Esdras, the 11th chapter. When you read in the book of Daniel, the 7th chapter, you have the different beasts that the Lord showed Daniel in the vision, okay, which was also another way of the same thing that Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream with the statue. All right, and those beasts represent different empires. Now, in Daniel, the 7th chapter, you have the first beast, right? The lion with eagle's wings, which represents the Assyrio-Babylonian Empire. Then you had the second beast with the bear, the Medo-Persians. Then you had the leopard, and then you had the beast that had great iron teeth, and it stamped the residue and all of that good stuff, right? Now that fourth beast represented the Roman Empire, okay, and pretty much Ezra was given a vision of this beast, but in the form of an eagle, okay? So we're going to go into it. This is Second Esdras chapter 11, verse 1. It says, "Then saw I a dream, and behold, there came up from the sea an eagle, which had 12 feathered wings and 3 heads. Now the eagle that had 12 feathered wings represents the Roman Empire, okay? But the period from Julius Caesar up until Domitian, okay? So that's why it says it had 12 feathered wings. The 12 feathered wings represent the 12 Caesars, from Julius to Augustus to Tiberius to Caligula to Claudius to Nero to Galba, Otho, Vitellius. Wait, what? Yeah, I think it was Vitellius and Vespasian and Titus and Domitian. So those are the 12 feathered wings. Now the 3 heads represent what is known as the first triumvirate. When you look up the first triumvirate, you'll find out that it was like a joining of power between Julius Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus. All right, and they basically joined power. All right, and that was called the first triumvirate. Okay, so they were the 3 heads: Julius, Pompey, and Crassus. It says here, verse 2, "And I saw, and behold, she spread her wings over all the earth." And when it says all the earth, is dealing with the known world at that time. "And all the winds of the air blew on her, and were gathered together. And I beheld, and out of her feathers there grew other contrary feathers, and they became little feathers and small." Now the other contrary feathers are still a part of the 12 feathers, all right, but they were contrary and became small because of all the 12 Caesars. Not every not every one of them accomplished the same thing. Not every one of them was great and on the same level. You had some Caesars that were just, they just came, they ruled for a period of time, and then they passed. So it says, verse 4, "But her heads were at rest. The head in the midst was greater than the other, yet rested it with the residue." So her heads were at rest, meaning that the those that made up the first triumvirate, Julius, Crassus, and Pompey, had died. Okay, they were dead. And the head in the midst, which was Julius, right, was greater than the other. So out of the 3 of them, Julius was the head in the midst, the greater one, yet rested it with the residue, meaning even though he was the greatest out of them, he still died as well. Verse 5, it says, "Moreover, I beheld, and lo, the eagle flew with her feathers, and reigned upon earth and over them that dwelt therein." And I saw that all things under heaven were subject unto her. Why? Because, well, let me finish it. It says, and no man spake against her, no, not one creature upon earth. This is because the Most High set them up to rule. All right. Now, it was prophesied, right? It was prophetic that the Roman Empire would rule as the fourth kingdom. So they had to come up into power, and things had to be made subject onto them for the vision that Daniel was given to have come to pass. All right. Now, it says, no man spake against her, no, not one creature upon earth. Now, when you go to the time of the Roman Empire, you did have people that, spake against Rome. Like they Rome wasn't there. You had people that had a problem with the Romans ruling over them. But what it means is that they weren't able to take down and overcome Rome. Because the Most High set the Romans up to be in power at that time. And when you read, you'll see that there were different revolts, but yet for that period of time, the Most High had it to where they got crushed by the Romans. It says, and I beheld, and lo, the eagle rose upon her talons and spake to her feathers, saying, watch not all at once, sleep every one in his own place, and watch by course. What it means is that you had 12 Caesars, and they weren't all going to rule at the same time. It was one would rule, then after him, another one would rule, then after him, another one would rule, right? So they were watched by course. It says, but let the heads be preserved for the last, which is dealing with reincarnation, because the heads being the first triumvirate, Julius Caesar, Crassus, and Pompey, they were going to come back in the reincarnation as the Flavian dynasty. Okay, so they were going to be the last three Caesars, in this the list of 12 Caesars. The Flavian dynasty was really the first triumvirate coming back in the reincarnation, and Julius came back as Vespasian, and then you had I believe Pompey, as Titus, and Crassus as Domitian, but nevertheless, it was those three coming back. That's why it says, "Let the heads be preserved for the last." It says, and I beheld, and lo, the voice went not out of her heads, but from the midst of her body. All right, which what was technically the body of Rome was their Senate. Okay, because remember, this voice is the voice that said sleep. It told them to watch by course, right? And the Senate was Rome's structure as to how they made certain decisions and how they passed certain laws. So one thing about Rome was that you would have one person rule, then another person would rule after them, then another person would rule after them. So that's watching by course. Okay. And that's something that they all decided upon. And ultimately the Senate would have the power to pass that as, the way for Rome to be ruled. Okay. So that's dealing with the Senate, the voice coming from the midst of her body. It says, and I numbered her contrary feathers, and behold, there were 8 of them. Because like we read up above, you had certain contrary feathers, which were a part of the 12, but they weren't on the same level as everybody else. There were certain Caesars that were minor and some that were more major. It says, verse 12, and I looked, and behold, on the right side, there arose one feather and reigned over all the earth. Now, when you deal with like certain breakdowns like this, where it's a vision that the prophet is seeing or is being shown to him, just like certain scriptures in the book of Revelation, it's not straight direct. It's like when you have a dream and you wake up and you're trying to tell your dream to somebody, you start speaking. So, oh, and then I saw this part, and then there was this, and there was this. Oh, and then also back when I said this, there was also this over there, right? So sometimes you may be reading it, then it may go in one direction, and then it'll come back and then continue from a previous point, which you'll sort of see like as we keep going. So it says here, verse 12, and I looked, and behold, on the right side there arose one feather and reigned over all the earth. Salakia. And that feather is talking about Julius Caesar. It says, and because now he's seeing the succession, all right, of the different Caesars ruling. So the first one, right, the one feather, the first one here in verse 12 is Julius. Verse 13 it says, and so it was that when it rained, the end of it came, and the place thereof appeared no more. So the next following stood up and reigned and had a great time. So it was when it rained that the end of it came, because eventually Julius reigned for a period of time, but then he died. And the place thereof appeared no more because he was dead. So the next following stood up, which was who? Augustus Caesar. All right. It says, and reigned and had a great time, because during the reign of Augustus Caesar, they call it Pax Romana. And during his reign, I believe he actually reigned for the longest period of time. If I'm not mistaken, it was about 40 or 44 years. Let's see, Augustus Kaiser. All right. Yeah, like 43 or so. Let's see. Does it tell us? Does it tell us how long? Let me see. All right. So it doesn't explicitly tell us how long, but I mean, you could do the quick maths, right? If he started to reign 27 BC to 14 AD, that's 27. But then you count down. So by zero BC, that's 27 years already, and then you just add an additional 14 to that. I'm not good at quick maths, so we're gonna type that in here. 41 years. Okay, cool. So right around that time, right? So you can see Augustus reigned for a pretty long time. So as it says back in 2nd Esdras 11 and 13, it says, and reigned and had a great time, and it happened that when it rained, the end of it came also, like as the first, so that it appeared no more. Right. So after Augustus had reigned, eventually he died, just like his father, or just like Julius died. So it says, verse 15, then came there a voice unto it and said, hear thou that has borne rule over the earth so long. Now, the whole book of 2nd Esdras chapter 11 is talking about the Roman Empire, okay, dealing especially with the time from Julius Caesar up until Domitian. Okay, that's what it's talking about. That's the time period that it's dealing with. And it's going to tell you that right now. So verse 16, it says, hear thou. Now, there there may be certain verses in there that you know can be applied to America in terms of, oh, you can see some of these things, like when you get to the latter verses, it talks about how they took peace from the earth, and when they went out of rulership, the earth was refreshed. That's a similar sentiment to America, right? What's going to happen when America gets taken out. However, in 2nd Esdras chapter 11 is dealing with Rome specifically. So it says, hear thou that has borne rule over the earth so long. This, and so is talking to Augustus, because he reigned for such a long period of time. This I say unto thee, before thou beginnest to appear no more, there shall none after thee attain unto thy time, which is true, right? No Caesar within those 12 reigned as long as Augustus. It says, neither unto the half thereof, which I think Tiberius, let's see, how long did Tiberius rule for? I hate that they don't tell us the length. You know, just type in how long his reign was. Got us doing all this extra math for what? Anyway, Tiberius reigned from 14 AD to 37 AD. So you type that in there, and we have about 23 years, right? So give or take roughly around, you know, half the halfway mark of Augustus. So it says here, so he didn't hit the point. Matter of fact, you know what? Let me just do this. Let's do 23 times 2, which is 46, right? So that's about what we got 41 for Augustus. We got 46 for here, 4 years extra. So yeah, so Tiberius did get to right around that halfway mark, but nevertheless, when you deal with certain precepts, it gives you that circa sometimes certain verses will give you that circa time period, but it won't be exact. Like, oh, but it said neither unto the half thereof. Exactly half of Augustus' reign is whatever, and Tiberius reigned a couple extra years more than that. So what's that about? You know, what are you doing, bro? But anyway, continuing verse 18, the point was that Augustus was going to reign the longest. It was just putting an emphasis on that. Verse 18, it says, then arose the third, right, which is Tiberius Caesar. It says, and reigned as the other before, and appeared no more also. So Tiberius also reigned, and you know, his time was up, and then he ended up dying. So it says, verse 19, so went it with all the residue one after another, as that everyone reigned and then appeared no more. Now, like I mentioned before, from verse 19 up until I believe like verse 22, all right, Ezra basically, well, as we'll read, he tells you like sort of like the overall process of what happened, right? I saw the first three, and pretty much the rest of them just reigned just like that. One came and reigned, the other came and reigned, the other came and reigned, up until all of them were done, right? That's what it's saying in verse 19. So when it, with all the residue, one after another, right? So one came up, then they reigned, then they died. Then the other came up, then they reigned, then they left. Like it said above, watch not all at once, watch by course. It says, as that everyone reigned, and then appeared no more. Then I beheld, and lo, in process of time, the feathers that followed stood up upon the right side, that they might rule also. And some of them ruled, but within a while they appeared no more. For some of them were set up, but ruled not. Yeah, so basically, throughout this process, you had different Caesars that came up and they ruled, and you had some, like during the time period of Rome, there were periods where you had civil wars, and you had like Salakia, you had like different chaotic times where you had certain individuals that would either orchestrate it or would try to take advantage of it in order to come up into power, but it didn't go that way. So you had some that looked like they were going to take over, but they ended up failing at it, you know, and they weren't able to. Verse 22, it says, after this I looked, and behold, the 12 feathers appeared no more, nor the 2 little feathers. See, so in process of time, each feather came and reigned, and then its time was up. But then when you go to verse 23, he basically goes back to continuing from verse 18, because he stopped at the third feather, which was Tiberius, but then now you got to keep on going, right? So verse 23 says, and there was no more upon the eagle's body, but 3 heads that rested, and 6 little wings, right? And that's that makes what, 8, because the first he had mentioned three up above, right, which was Julius, Augustus, and Tiberius. And if you take the first 3 out of the 12, you'll be left with 8. So it says here, verse 24, then saw I also that 2 little feathers divided themselves from the 6, and remained under the head that was upon the right side. Now the 2 little feathers is dealing with Galba and Otho, and they were little because they reigned for a very short period of time, as verse 25 and 26 and 27 is going to tell you. It says, for the 4 continued in their place, and the 4 that continued in their place were Nero, Galba, Salakia, it was Galba, Otho, Vitellius, and Vespasian. All right, I believe it was called the year of the 4 emperors. And this happened after Nero died, the year of the 4 emperors. Oh, God, the water for that. Yeah, I made an error on the map. 12 minus 3 is not 8. 12 minus 3 is 9. Slack about that. But either way, it's still talking about the same thing. Nevertheless, you had the year of the 4 emperors. The year of the 4 emperors And it was basically 69 AD where you had Galba, Otho, Vitellius, and Vespasian pretty much all in like a year's span, right? So you can see the different coins over here, and I don't, they probably have the names written on here, but it looks like it's probably Latin or a different language. But if we can get, okay, so it says here, the year of the four emperors, AD 69, was the first civil war of the Roman Empire, during which four emperors ruled in succession. You had Galba, Otho, Vitellius, and Vespasian. Okay, so literally it was called the year of the four emperors. So as it says here, verse 24, for the four continued in their place. Verse 25, and I beheld, it says, and I beheld, and lo, the feathers that were under the wing thought to set up themselves to have the rule. And I beheld, and lo, there was one set up, but shortly it appeared no more. And this one that was set up, that shortly appeared no more, was Galba, the first of the four in the year of the four emperors. Now let's find out how long Galba reigned. And it says here, Galba, born, his full name was Servius Sulpicius Galba. Yeah, Romans got to have had the funniest names, man. I mean, there's always some Eus, at the end, some Eus or something like that. Lucius, Livius. Anyway, so it says here, December 3rd, January 15th. We have here his reign was from June 8th to it says here January 15th, 69. It says he was the sixth Roman emperor ruling from 68 AD to 69. The time period where all of them ruled adds up to a year. So if you see 68 to 69, this is not 2 years. He reigned partly from 68 into 69. It says after his adoption by his stepmother, and before becoming emperor, he was known as Lucius Livius Ocilla Sulpicius Galba. Oh shit. It says he was the first emperor in the year of the four emperors and assumed the throne following Emperor Nero's suicide. So let me actually type in this right here. How long did Galba reign? Hopefully they can just give me a straight number. Okay. So it says here reigned for 7 months. Cool. So that's verse 26, right? And I beheld, and lo, there was one set up, but shortly it appeared no more. And the second was sooner away than the first, right? So the second that reigned of the year of the four emperors was, you had Galba, and the next was Otho. All right, let's go down and find Otho. I'm just gonna click through these different ones and hit Otho real quick. Nero, Galba, Otho. All right, boom. So we have here Marcus Otho, born Marcus Silvius Otho, was the seventh Roman emperor, ruling for 3 months from January 15th to April 16th, 69. He was the second emperor of the year of the four emperors. So as you can see, it said the first was set up, but shortly it appeared no more. Right, because because 7 months is not that long of a period of time for a rulership, right? But then it says the second, it says and the second was sooner away than the first, right? Which was Otho, and he reigned for only 3 months. Verse 28, it says, and I beheld, and lo, the two that remained thought also in themselves to reign. So of the four, the first two was Galba and Otho, and the second two was Vitellius and Vespasian. It says, and when they so thought, behold, there awakened one of the heads that were at rest, namely it that was in the midst, for that was greater than the other two heads. So the head that was at rest, like we went over in the beginning, the main one, the one that was in the midst, was Julius Caesar. Okay, so when it says here, and when they so thought, behold, there awakened one of the heads that were at rest, meaning that at this period of time when you had Vitellius and Vespasian left, this is when the Lord had it to where the Vespasian started to get raised up because he was going to be basically the head of the Flavian dynasty. Okay, so that's when it awakened. Awakened, not meaning that that's when he was born. As in like that's when Julius was born back as Vespasian. Vespasian was already alive at this point. Okay, but it's just representing when Vespasian started to get raised up because he was going to become the next. He was going to usher in the Flavian dynasty, which would take over and finish off the rest of the rulerships, the last three, that is. So it says, and when they so thought, behold, there awakened one of the heads that were at rest, namely it that was in the midst, and that was Julius Caesar, when he came back in the reincarnation as Vespasian. It says, for that was greater than the other two heads. Right, Julius was greater than Pompey and Crassus. It says, and then I saw that the other two heads were joined with it. So the other two heads that were with Julius during the first triumvirate were Pompey and Crassus, and they came back as Titus and Domitian, and they joined Julius, who came back as Vespasian. So the first triumvirate came back as the Flavian dynasty. Okay, and this time they came back as Vespasian's sons. Okay, so it says, verse 31, and behold, the head was turned with them that were with it, and did eat up the two feathers under the wing that would have reigned. Now you might read this and say, well, that sounds a little confusing because if of the two feathers, one was Vitellius and the other was Vespasian, how then can Vespasian, being that head, eat the two feathers if he is one of those two feathers? Because it's written in a parabolic way, meaning that Vespasian, when he came up into power, he ended up taking over. Now, Vitellius also reigned for a little bit, okay? But overall, what ended up happening was Vespasian came up into power not as himself, by himself, but in the form of the Flavian dynasty, okay? So when it says that the head ate up the two feathers, it's not that, well, Vespasian ate up Vespasian and Vitellius. All it means was that the way Vespasian came up into rulership was through the Flavian dynasty. Okay, so it wasn't like, okay, Vitellius reigns and then Vespasian reigns and then somebody else reigns just like that. No, the way Vespasian was going to reign was going to bring about this Flavian dynasty where he was going to reign and Titus was going to follow and Domitian was going to follow. So don't get caught up on the wording and then get confused thinking, well, how is that possible? In a nutshell, all it's saying is that after Vitellius, Vespasian came up into power, introducing the Flavian dynasty. Verse 32, it says, but this head put the whole earth in fear. This head is dealing with Vespasian when he came up into when he became emperor. It says, and bear rule in it. Good Lord. It says, over all those that dwell upon the earth with much oppression, and it had the governance of the world more than all the wings that had been. And after this I beheld, and lo, the head that was in the midst suddenly appeared no more, like as the wings. So Vespasian ruled, and then eventually he died. And when you read about it, it's an interesting. Let me actually just pull it up. Let's pull up Vespasian. Let's see if we can find his death. All right, boom, cool. So it says here, in his ninth consulship, Vespasian had a slight illness in Campania, and returning at once to Rome, he left for Aquae, Cutile, and the country around Rate, where he spent every summer. However, his illness worsened, and he developed severe diarrhea. With the feeling of death overwhelming him on his deathbed, he incited, Ve puto Dios fio. Dear me, I think I'm becoming a god. And according to Suetonius, the 12 Caesars, taken on a sudden with such an attack of diarrhea that he all but swooned. He said, an emperor ought to die standing. And while he was struggling to get on his feet, he died in the arms of those who tried to help him on the 9th day before the calends of July, at the age of 69 years, 7 months, and 7 days. So that was the death of Vespasian. Second Esdras chapter 11, verse 32. So going on, verse 33, it says, and after this I beheld, and lo, the head that was in the midst suddenly appeared no more, like as the wings. And there remained the two heads, which also in like sort ruled upon the earth. And this was Titus and Domitian. It says, and over those that dwelt therein. And I beheld, and lo, the head upon the right side devoured it that was upon the left side. Now the head upon the right side was Domitian, and it that was upon the left was Titus. And after Vespasian died, Titus came up into power first, and Domitian was basically to follow after. Now, when you actually look up Titus's death, there's sources that say that Domitian was behind it. I believe he poisoned him or set him up or something like that. And they say that Titus basically said something that hinted along the lines of he knew that he should have put Domitian to death when he had the chance, because because there were accounts of Domitian either plotting to kill him or take him over. But you know what? Let's just read it right here. This is the death of Titus. It says, at the closing of the games, Titus officially dedicated the amphitheater and the baths in what was his final recorded act as emperor. He set out for the Sabine territories, but fell ill at his first posting station, where he died of a fever, reportedly in the same farmhouse as his father. Allegedly, the last words he uttered before passing were, I have made but one mistake. Titus had ruled the Roman Empire for just over 2 years, from the from the death of his father in 79 to his own on September 13th, 81. He was succeeded by Domitian, whose first act as emperor was to deify his brother. Historians have speculated on the on the exact nature of his death, and to which mistake Titus alluded in his final words. Philostratus wrote that he was poisoned by Domitian with a sea hare, and that his death had been foretold him by Apollonius of Tyana. Suetonius and Cassius Dio maintained that he died of natural causes, but both accused Domitian of having left the ailing Titus for dead. Consequently, Dio believed that the mistake to refer to not having Titus's brother executed when he was found to be openly plotting against him. Okay, so in essence, the consensus is that Domitian was behind the death of Titus, and Titus, upon his death, realized that, and that's why he said, I've made one mistake, because when he found out his brother was plotting against him, he didn't take him out. Okay, so verse 35, as you can see, it says, the head upon the right side devoured it that was upon the left side. Verse 36, then I heard a voice which said unto me, look before thee, and consider the thing that thou hast seen, or that thou seest. And I beheld, and lo, as it were, a roaring lion chased out of the wood, which represents Yahushai. When you read the scriptures, it tells you that Yahushai is the lion of the tribe of Judah. It says, and I saw that he sent out a man's voice unto the eagle and said, hear thou, I will talk with thee, and the highest shall say unto thee, Art not thou it that remainest? Now, this is what I was mentioning earlier. Art not thou it that remainest of the 4 beasts, whom I made to reign in my world, that the end of their times might come through them? So where's the record of the 4 beasts that were made to reign in the world. It's in Daniel, the 7th chapter, right? So the remaining of the four beasts was the fourth one, which is the Roman Empire. It says, and the fourth came and overcame all the beasts that were past, and had power over the world with great fearfulness, and over the whole compass of the earth, which with much wicked oppression, and so long time dwelt he upon the earth with deceit, which is dealing with the Roman Empire. It says, for the earth hast thou not judged with truth, for thou hast afflicted the meek, which are Israelites. Thou hast hurt the peaceable, which are Israelites. Thou hast loved liars, and destroyed the dwellings of them that brought forth fruit, which are Israelites, and hast cast down the walls of such as did thee no harm. Now, when you go into history, you find out what did Rome do to Israel. All right. We refer to it, right, 70 AD when they besieged Jerusalem, which really was about 66 to about 73 AD, the Jewish Roman wars. And they actually did cast down our walls. All right. It says, therefore is thy wrong dealing come up onto the highest, and thy pride onto the mighty. Because every empire has a measurement. And when they fill up the measure of what they're set up to do, whether it's a measurement of wickedness or whatever, the Lord says, all right, now's the time. Now you know your time is up. So every empire, every rulership has a time. That pretty much in Second Esdras, I think the 6th chapter or so, that's what Ezra was inquiring about, right? He said, what is going to be the parting asunder of the times, right? The ending of the first and the beginning of the next. So it says, verse 44, the highest also hath looked upon the proud times, and behold, they are ended, and his abominations are fulfilled. Yeah, because from Julius to Domitian, there are certain things that needed to take place within that time. And when at the end of Domitian's reign, those things were fulfilled that needed to happen at that time. It says, and therefore appear no more, thou eagle, nor thy horrible wings, nor thy wicked feathers, nor thy malicious heads, nor thy hurtful claws, nor all thy vain body, which is dealing with the Roman Empire from Julius to Domitian. It says that all the earth may be refreshed and may return, being delivered from thy violence, and that she may hope for the judgment and mercy of him that made her. And this is what I was mentioning earlier, that it sounds like, oh, well, this is basically what's going to happen when America is also taken out, which is true. But in this vision, it was really referring to Rome. However, just like there are other scriptures that we really refer to something that may have happened historically, but then we can also apply it now as well. You just have to, like the apostle said, clarify or qualify the scripture. You know, if it's a scripture that refers to something else or something that has already happened, then you got to let it be known that this is really what it's talking about, but it can also be applied to now because yada, yada, yada. All right. But pretty much that's it on that. That's Second Esdras, the 11th chapter, dealing with the Roman Empire from Julius to Domitian. And, it pretty much covers it all. Now, when you go into Second Esdras, the 12th chapter, is nothing really new, because Second Esdras 12 is pretty much a breakdown of Second Esdras 11. Because the angels, whenever the angels gave prophets visions and dreams, in most cases, they would explain to them what does it mean, because the individual who got it wouldn't understand. Because these visions were given in symbolism forms. An eagle with wings and talons, a beast with 7 heads, and and this, and he's like, what, a ram with 2 horns and a he-goat, and the ram is, what does this mean? Then the angel has to say, okay, the ram represents this, right? The wings represent this. The contrary feathers represent this. They're actually people. They're kings. So when you go to Second Esdras 12, Lord willing, we could go into that as well. It'll basically explain Second Esdras 11. All right, but that's it for Second Esdras 11. Lord willing, that was edifying and informative to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rakakudash. Until next time, Shalom.